Greetings and welcome to We Foster Film, a show where we discuss all facets of filmmaking and television production with the people that make them. I'm your host, Cameron Mccallum, coming to you live from the NECAT studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. Joining me again today is my co-host, Nashville recording artist and star of the television series Cooking with Big Fella, NECAT board member and hardest working man in Nashville, Big Fella. How we doing tonight, Big Fella?
Man, you know I'm doing good, Cam.
Good to see you, man. So on tonight's program, in celebration of Black History Month, we are focusing on Black voices in media and the importance of representation both in front of and behind the camera. We have a great set of panelists here for our discussion. First, let me introduce to you Michelle S. Duffy, CEO of D3 Entertainment Group, who has worked with major companies like Sony, Paramount, and Chrysler, and headlined marketing campaigns for artists like Tyler Perry, the Bishop T.D. Jakes, and Will Smith, most recently working on King Richard, which is currently nominated for 6 Academy Awards. Good evening, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and more than that, I am so appreciative of the film that I just saw. Big Fella, congratulations, and thank you. My heart is so warm. Like, that inspired me so much. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here, but thank you.
Awesome. So next up we have Andrea Blackman, Chief Diversity of Equity and Inclusion Officer for the City of Nashville. Andrea curated and led what is now internationally recognized as the Civil Rights Center at NPL, and also held the post of professor at both Lipscomb University and Vanderbilt University's Peabody College. You can hear her in deep conversations on her podcast, Truth Be Told. Andrea, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Big Fella. I echo what Michelle says, that the documentary was powerful, just their voices and their presence. Thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Next up, we have Sean Witzel, a writer, director, actor, producer, poet, and teaching artist, combining his passion for social justice with his love for the arts to entertain and enlighten audiences. Founder and artistic director of the Destiny Theater Experience, his works address social issues ranging from police brutality, mental health, and domestic violence to homelessness, childhood trauma, and mass incarceration. His one-man show, 23-1, which tackles solitary confinement, was named Best Blend of Theater and Activism by the Nashville Scene. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's see. Next up, we have Khalil. Say it for me again.
Ekalona.
Khalil Ekalona is the daily host of This Is Nashville, starting next week on NPL Radio 90.3 here in Nashville, Tennessee. Previously, he hosted No More Normal, the pandemic-focused show on KUMN Albuquerque. He's also served as the co-host of Good Day New Mexico on KOB4 and as a correspondent with New Mexico PBS. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. Appreciate it.
And finally, we have Malicia Edwards, a graduate of both Fisk University and MTSU. She's an award-winning writer and producer and co-founder of Et Al Films. Her film Dark Girls 2 premiered on Oprah Winfrey's own network. Her newest film, Freedom of Voice, which we all just had the pleasure of seeing here, is now broadcasting on the NECAT network. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So, I'm going to let Big Fellas kick off the conversation tonight. Where do you want to go with this?
Man, first and foremost, I want to say thank all of y'all for being here, like for real, because you could have been anywhere in the world. But you right here with us at NECAT on a rainy Thursday night. It's a little cold outside, and y'all braved through all that and came out here, so thank y'all very much. I think we should kick this off with, so I guess we'll start with the film. I'm going to go to Malicia. We have a couple people. We have 3 people who are part of it. So we're seeing Andrea Blackman. She is the one that, honestly, she made it happen. We would not have been at the library like that. It was last minute. I called her like, look, we're gonna do this. And it was like a month and a half out, and it's not supposed to work like that. But she made it happen. She made it all the way happen. So thank you for that. Matter of fact, let's talk. I'm gonna ask you about that real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, what made you say, okay, let's do this?
Do you want the truth or no? You said we were live.
No, we
right?
want the truth.
We want the truth.
Yeah.
A couple of times there was this voice on my voicemail, you said the truth, Big Fella. And he was saying, Mrs. Blackman, I need you to give me a call. This is important. You know, I said, okay, call several times. And there was something behind the voice that made me say, maybe I should actually check this voicemail and see who it is. And it was a Big Fella. And he said, we have some things we want to do with the kids. That's it. And we need to do it at the library. I love the Civil Rights Room, and I want the kids to be there and experience it. And it was just the very nature of being able to be a host and allow these kids to come in and learn a part of Nashville's history, but also creating their place and what that history means for them. So I had to say yes.
Helping develop their voices.
They found their voices.
Sean Witzel, you did have them write them names on them words on the back, man. And you do this a lot. You like get people to, what do you call it, man? Like get the thoughts out of you onto paper. How like what is that called?
Well, so that particular exercise was, I put a little spin on it. So for anyone who doesn't know me, one of the things that I do is I teach creative writing. And so, but I usually put those signs on people's back, and we write words of affirmations at the end of a workshop. But I wanted to take the words that we kind of discussed in our session. So you see words like bravery, courage, sit-ins, and other words that were related to the civil rights movement. And then just kind of, it was a way for them to brainstorm and to get those words out, whatever the first thing that came to mind. And I like that. It's fun for the kids to, they could have sat at the table and just wrote them down, but to be able to move around and to write on each other's back, that was like a twist that they weren't expecting, and it adds a little bit of fun, a fun element to the writing. So that's what I like it, to make my sessions as interactive as I possibly can make them, and so that's what that was about.
It worked, man. It worked. Okay, and then last question, Malicia, just to get the questions about the workshop out the way so we can get to the voices, because it's called Freedom of Voice, and we was trying to free them little kids' voices from inside of them. So, I always say, my mom used to always tell me, she's like, it's more room out here in the world than it is inside of you. So get it on out or it's going to eat you up. You know what I'm saying? That was part of the sponsoring thought behind it. Malicia, you pulled this together as far as getting all this stuff shot all 3 days, really 4 days. And you did it for, Lord have mercy, I can't believe you did it for whatever. Thank you so much. Just tell me about your experience, just so we can get all of that, everybody's experience out the way.
Well, I was very inspired. Maybe a few months before this, when you came to me about this, we did a film with Belcourt, called In the Shadows. And basically it was about African-American girls and expression. So, when you came to me about this with kids being able to write a book and express themselves about different things, I was like on board. I was very inspired the first time, and I knew this one would be just as inspiring, and also, give the kids a chance to really express themselves.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first movie, that movie she did, the In the Shadows, I cried the whole time. We was at the Belcourt. Everybody was crying. It was everybody. It was heavy. I ain't know that it was like that.
I'll jump in, just kind of jumping onto the idea of teaching these kids. Let's talk about how important is it to put these people together at a young age to grow them into the people that are going to be making the media that's out there. We have filmmakers with us. We have radio hosts with us. Maybe what was it whenever you were little that made you want to do what you're doing now? And what do you think we could be doing to inspire those kids to turn into a powerful voice in the future? We'll start right here.
Well, for me, I was always a dreamer. And so I think it's really important that a workshop like this was done, because, when kids realize what's inside of them, the potential that they have, that at the very core of them, their story is important, that their story will inspire other people, other kids, other adults. But a lot of times it takes the nudging of someone like Big Fella, someone like the panel who helped with, bringing this to fruition. We have to nudge the kids. We actually have to even nudge adults and let them know that there's so much power and importance and significance inside of each one of us. And so when you get to a point where you can, tap into that magic inside of a person so that they will be productive and that they will write their story, say their story, do their story, well, then someone else is inspired. And so now, we're starting a revolution or a movement because we have inspired. So, yeah.
I'll comment. I made a movie a couple years ago about former Harlem Globetrotter that played back in the 50s. We were looking for footage just as B-roll to put in to kind of represent his childhood. We had trouble, and what a lot of the people at the archives were telling us at the time is, in comparison, they just didn't shoot footage of black children during that time period. We're living in a day and age where the majority of teenagers, at least, have telephones with cameras in their pockets. So for the first time ever, we're getting documentation of a life and and representation that way. How do you think that's going to change the landscape of how people perceive black culture, whether it be on the internet or on screens or in media in general, just by being able to see people where they really are? And Khalil, let's go to you on that one.
Well, I think it's important to understand that black culture, for one, is not monolithic. And so in this exploration of particularly young people who have these devices and they're using TikTok, social media, YouTube, other things to expand and explore what they're living and how they're living, what their experience is, you have to understand that, one, they're young people, so wherever they're at right now is not where they're going to be in 20, 30 years. We all know the Muhammad Ali quote, if you believe the same thing at 50 that you believed at 20, you wasted 30 years of your life. So it's wonderful to get it, an idea of where they're going and what's happening with them, but that is not the end point. Case in point, young filmmakers in Africa were using broken phones to make films, feature-length films full of effects and everything else, And sometimes when you have all of the best gadgets available, you find yourself stagnant and you can't make anything happen. But here are these young people, these children, who found broken phones and made them work for themselves. That creates innovation. That creates genius. That creates what is new rather than carbon copies. You can be a carbon copy and acquire the skills to get employed and to get your work out there, but what is really going to make you stand out? So I think the advent of technology is wonderful in allowing people to be seen, and young folks. And let's continue to develop that. Let's see what they can do. Let's push them to expand their creative minds as they learn who they are.
I think that's I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he does a program with kids where they shoot. You just teach them. He said we teach them a word a week, and the word every week is content. He was like, I'm teaching them content. Content is the word that's gonna dictate your life and your future for the 20s that's coming up. This time coming, and he was like, that's content go both ways. Like some content can save you and get you here, but the rest of it will destroy you and hold you down. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do we get the kids to use their voices for positive things and end up using their voice to do what y'all have done? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you do that? When do you grab them and let them know the content thing go both ways, and you could be like this, you can get with this, or you can get with that?
I'll jump in real quick. I think it's important to be patient with them. I mean, they're kids. Yeah. I'm not going to expect a 16-year-old to act like a 29-year-old. In many ways, a lot of people think that adolescence doesn't end until you're 25, 26 anyway. So, be patient with them, but also set examples and show them. I think there's enough examples, even though they cognitively can't determine, there's enough examples of where content can lead you down the wrong path, But what are examples of content that can be great? Because sometimes some of the content is just attention grabbing, Is this content meaningful? One thing to ask them, to pose to a 12 or 13-year-old, are you going to watch this in 15 years? Are you going to be proud to watch this in 15 years? Just pose that to them and let them sit on that and think, and then let them act, and you go from there. You gotta constantly adapt and adjust with them because they are still growing.
Malicia, I'll go to you with this question, but we had a lot of conversation about just representation on screen and the way that we're seeing people for the first time, and kind of the thing that in media, I think we all would agree that we're seeing a lot more black voices in front of the camera and behind the camera right now. But, you know, until very recently, the only stories that we were really seeing that were getting a lot of just, you know, fare out there were the same kind of repeated stories. You would see civil rights stories, you would see slavery stories, you may see someone, you know, hood stories, that kind of thing. But there hasn't really been a big take up on like putting kids on screen in the same way. Like there's no, it's like the Goonies, which is a bunch of white kids running around in a cave. We haven't seen the black version, and that used to be the way that they would do things. If they would have a successful movie, they would take this, well, let's make a black version of it. And it's kind of started to mix a little bit, but we haven't got to the point where you're seeing black faces on screen in that way. What's something you would like to see where it's maybe not, you know, the heavy stuff as much as it's just the everyday or just the fun stuff?
I think it's important we start to push networks, and that can be through content. The thing is that networks go with what is hot, you know, what's out there, what's hot. And the negative things seem to be the hot thing. And so it is important that we let the networks know what we want to see. And so if we want to see the more positive things, if we want to see more, you know, positive images of black kids on TV, we have to push kids to, you know, push people to make the content, and then push the networks and let them know this is what we want to see. For example, Issa Rae, to me, I use her example all the time. You know, she started with no money at all, a YouTube show called The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, with no money, with all her friends. And they didn't have the best cameras, they didn't have anything, basically. I remember reading, she said she had like $2 left in her account when she made the first show. So she put it out there. And so by putting it out there, HBO eventually, someone saw it on YouTube, and you see where she is now. And so this is what we need to do, and be these positive influence to kids that, you know, it's not all about the reality television, because a lot of them see that, and they see fighting, and they see all this stuff makes it, you know, on TV. We also need to be mentors and be the positive influence that we want, that they want to see on network television or streaming.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
As an actor, you want as a black actor, it's kind of like you have this, as an actor, you just want to be able to play roles.
Yeah.
You want to be able to choose roles that are all across the spectrum. When you are a black actor, there's that other layer that you don't have to, that are not involved when you're a white actor. It's very similar to the concept of double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois laid out, right? And so, like, you have this, when choosing roles, you're like, oh, this looks like this would be a cool role to take. But then as a black person, you're thinking, oh, am I playing a stereotype? You know what I'm saying? So white actors and white content creators get to do whatever they want to do, all across the spectrum. And when it comes to our content, we feel like, oh, we gotta choose between the slavery movies and the comedies. No, we don't. Right. There's space out there for all of that stuff. We should be making all of it, and people gravitate toward what it is that they are looking for at that particular time. You know, so because I feel like I understand how people feel about like movies that have a lot of trauma in it. You know, forcing us to look back at a time when, or current times. It don't even have to be in the 60s. We see it now, and so. I understand why people get tired of that type of content. And I think people should do whatever it is that they need to do to keep themselves, to make sure that they're okay. So if you can't consume that, or you can't consume that at a particular time, then don't. But like the Emmett Till series that just came out, I feel like as hard as it was for me to watch, I felt like it was important for me to watch. right? But I understand that, and then I go watch a show like Grand Crew, which is an all-black comedy. You know what I'm saying? So we can have that too. So I think it's super important that we not limit ourselves and allow ourselves to play the whole spectrum of our humanity.
That's real. I would love to hear Michelle's input on this, because even working on that King Richard, being close to that, like that's right up the alley. Just a good story about a black daddy raising them two girls in Compton. You know what I'm saying? I can relate to that one.
And I mean, I think slowly but surely, and I hate to say that because it seems like when it comes to the African American voice, it's always slowly but surely. And there's so much patience that's needed in a genre other than, comedy or, as you said, it's a slavery pick. So, but I think like with some of the digital platforms that are available, like Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and those kinds of things, opportunities are more available because of the type of content that they will accept at those platforms. The frontline media, like, the network TV and the major studios like Sony and those types of networks, we still have to push and fight every single day to make our voices, even though our voices are important, and our consumer base of, $1.3 billion worth of economics that we're pouring into film and entertainment, still we have to fight to get the type of positioning with our actors, with our directors, with our producers, to prove that we have value when we do have value. And so my thing has been, well, let's just create the content ourselves. And as we create it ourselves, let's make sure that we are comparing apples to apples, and not try to slip under the door with something that's subpar. And let's feed the appetite of what people want to see, which is high quality production, great writing, great acting, and not necessarily named actors, but actors who just have passion and can sell a storyline. So I think this is the time. The time is now for us to realize who we are, realize that we're it, we can do it. We just need to get together, become a collective, and produce and direct and act and write the stories that are important to us, the stories that reflect our culture. And that's it. I mean, we're going to keep blaming someone else for not opening a door. We just need to start opening these doors ourselves. There's wealth in our community. There's resources, and beyond all of that, there's creativity to make it happen. We are a genius people, so this is the time.
Yeah, we got that.
We got that.
Real quick, with Andrea, you have an interesting situation, because we're talking about equity in media and in voices, and being a podcaster also. So your two different worlds are interesting. You are an equity person on a high level here, but you're a podcaster. You're a voice too. So how do your take on that, and then like how you balance that?
I think the balance is always going to be in question, right? We always have to figure out how we enter and exit into these spaces. And one of the things that my co-host and I on our podcast, we wanted to enter into that space creating our own content and not having being defined how we should enter. Should we enter and as this role, as mother, as chief diversity officer, as educator, as filmmaker? We wanted to just prove that we can create and be all of those things. I think Khalil said we're not a monolith, right? And so these voices that we're looking at in these faces in the media, we're not a monolith. And we had to remind people that this is who we are. I can be a mom, I can be a podcaster, I can do this, I can be a Zora enthusiast and a hip hop scholar. All of those things can coexist. And so I think the content that we sought out to create prove that we are not monolithic people. There's no broad swath of who we are. And so that is shown in the content that we're creating as well. And so the balance is giving ourselves the freedom and the grace to say we can be all of these things, and we can be all these things in excellence, right? We don't have to, being in excellence is not always the enslaved narrative. I can be an excellent, and being the historic element. I can show excellence in just talking about what it means to be a mother of a 20-year-old black son, all of those things. So we wanted to prove that there is no monolithic us.
Andrea, I'm going to go right back to you with this, because
It's deep.
just with the idea of, just like you're saying, it's not a monolith, and the audience now is not, it's not a black filmmaker for a black audience anymore. The audience is everybody. And so as these stories are starting to come out just more frequently, are we seeing more understanding in the general public? I mean, what do you think, like, again, as the lone white face on this panel tonight, do you think that those stories being told is educating people that may not have heard those stories before, that's changing the conversation in not just our nation, but just around the world? Can you speak on that?
I can, Cameron. That is such an interesting question. And you said being the lone face, white face. I think
White man.
the only lone white man. I think so. We can look at, am I writing my stories and my content for me? Which is yes, I am doing that, and I'm doing that because I'm not trying to capitalize on it. It doesn't matter if we don't have no listeners or no followers. But we also take in consideration as an artist. I think it's also our responsibility as well, right? We can write these stories and we can create a certain stereotype or a certain trope. And if, like I'm thinking of great scholars who have written material and filmmakers, there was a trope, there was a stereotype, but there was also some commentary to help educate and kind of redirect that narrative. So I think what I'm saying is that I think we do both. I think we create the content. I think we create the content that we want to create, but we also have a social responsibility, a social and an artistic responsibility to create more conversation around it so that we can challenge that narrative. We get to challenge what that character is. No one else gets to define for us how we cultivate that character, what he or she or they should have been doing. We get to define that.
Yeah. I think responsibility is a huge word. And Sean, I'd like you to speak on that, because I know that, just in the talk of, like, as we put these stories out front, like, what is the responsibility to get things finished, make them good, and deliver them to an audience in the general public? What is the responsibility to do that as an artist? Not even just as a black man or a black actor, but, like, the idea of, like, I'm putting my face out there. I'm going to become this character, and for all time's sake, I'm going to be that person that represents whatever it is that story is.
Yeah, I think you owe it to the craft, and you owe it to yourself if you're going to put the time and energy to do it right, and you owe it to the people who are watching. One of my dreams as an actor is to be a part of a show that impacted me the way some of the shows that I grew up watching. Yeah. Like, the show, I was a teenager in the 90s, and so, like, just thinking about those shows that came into our homes every week. And we, I've done film work, but there's something about the idea of doing a show that has where you can see characters grow and evolve over time, and you get to grow and evolve with them. So, like, just like the episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when his father comes back. As someone who dealt with similar issues in my childhood, that really meant a lot to me to see myself in that character, and it touches me every time I watch it, right? And I think that's what representation is about. It's like everybody should be able to see themselves somewhere in the medium, and that's TV, that's film, that's on stage and plays, that's podcasts, that's the news. We should be able to look out and see ourselves in the images that come into our home. And I think that we have a responsibility to those little boys and girls who are sitting at home waiting on us to deliver something that they can grow to, something that they can learn from, and something that they can look back when it's their turn and say, I want the little kids after me to feel that feeling that I felt when the Cosby Show came on
Yeah.
every day. I know that might be controversial right now, but like
Still
just
funny.
thinking,
It was still great.
but,
So still
but
funny.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
good.
like when we were growing up, we looked forward to like a different world coming on every day. And Martin.
Yeah.
And whatever. So like that's my dream, to create something like that, even if I'm behind the scenes with it. But I want to create something that means something to people, and so yeah.
I want to know from Khalil too. It's interesting, same question, being that the voice of WPLN, which is NPR in Nashville, which is, white people's Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Being a black man, walking that line where you gotta be black, but you still gotta be a dope radio host first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? You're always gonna be black, but being a dope radio host is what got you there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
walking that line in a place like this is an interesting question. I just want to know your thoughts, brother.
Well, being that I learned this as a child, I grew up, my family was in broadcasting. My father was a reporter and executive producer for Maryland Public Broadcasting. I've been around the game the entire time. As a little kid, we'd be watching the American Music Awards back when it was dope, and the Grammys, or every time we went to a show, my parents are like, just don't look at the headliner who the spotlight is on. If you can see backstage, see that. My parents taught us production and what it was because of who they were and how they learned. And they also taught us, you are yourself. I am not one to compartmentalize and say, okay, I'm going to be this Khalil at work, and then when I'm hanging out with Big Fella, I'm going to be this man. Yeah. I am the same person the entire time. Personal philosophy, I feel the compartmentalization of our lives is leading so many people to question who they are. Because if I have to be this way one time, and then suddenly I have to worry about code switching and everything else, when do you get to be you? You know what I mean? And so taking this job, coming from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and getting this job and coming here to be, the inaugural voice for this show, and getting to learn about Nashville, I got no choice but to be myself. The same when you and I first met, or when I talked to former Mayor Barry, or whoever I'm talking to in doing research for this show and discussing, I'm like, I have to be myself, or else that's a disservice, because for me to be anything else is not the person they hired. You can be like, what's wrong with you? What happened to you? You're not. This is what happened to the pizzazz that we want. Well, no, the pizzazz is Khalil. So let me be that, and let me represent myself as the human being. Not to push other parts of what we want to call identity to the side and say that they're not important, but I have to focus on the human and the fullness of my experience, so therefore I can talk to and relate to everyone who's going to hear my voice as I say, welcome to This Is Nashville 5 days a week at noon. That's a man, okay, I can trust that man.
Yeah.
I understand what he is doing. I feel him. He is real. Anybody who meets me understands that. So, but I think that ultimately it's philosophical a little bit, but it's up to each individual to kind of figure out for themselves. And I think that's where we're at. And so the pressure to be a certain way, I understand that some people are feeling, but I think if the easiest way to exist on the planet is if you are true to your own nature, regardless of what anybody has to say. So discover your nature. Oftentimes I find our nature is exactly who we were when we were 3 years old. So if you got family members, ask your mama and your daddy, what was I like when I was 3? Well, you was always independent and you always did these things. Continue to do that with bravery and honoring to yourself, and I think things will work out.
One of the things we always like to do is shine a light on people that are making stuff out in the world. So I just want to go down the line, start with Malicia, and I want you to just give us a name and tell us what that person is doing and why you enjoy watching that content, whether that be a filmmaker, a television producer, a podcaster, a radio host, whatever it is. Just give us a name and tell us why you like that right now.
There's so many names, so many people doing so much. But one person I'm going to say is Mary Mccallum here in Nashville. And I say that she was the one that really inspired me. I don't know if she even knows this. My story is that I came from a science medical background. I was totally not, 6 years ago, I wasn't doing any of this. So, but she helped inspire me to go, into first in the theater, into film, and she gave me that push. She's doing a lot of great things with plays. She's a writer, she's a producer, she does films. She has films winning awards in London, but she's here in Nashville. So everyone look out for Mary Mccallum. She's always doing something around here. Her partner Sean is here. They work a lot together, so that's the person I want to put out.
Fantastic. And Will?
I want to say, one, we were talking about shows and things that were a little bit different. You mentioned the Goonies. That automatically made me think of Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
Entirely a show that broke things open, I think, as far as seeing people, black people, in different situations, you know? I turned my father onto that show, and it blew his mind. But one person I'm going to say is Byron Allen.
Man.
Is somebody we don't talk about enough that we need to talk about a whole lot more.
I hate to interrupt you, but the amount of time me and Big Fella have sat in this studio and discussed that man, I am a big fan.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what we
Big
doing.
fan.
That's what we doing.
Byron Allen.
That's the plan.
And I hope he gets the Broncos. I think it
Yeah.
would be good for everything
Yeah.
if that happens.
I think that that's it, because I remember growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, watching Saturday Night Live, and when it's over, his show would come on. And people were like, that's the dude from That's Incredible. I know I'm dating myself, but
Commentary.
Generation X represent. And so,
We're here.
you know, he was, and, you know, we saw this, and we didn't know what he was up to. We didn't know what he was doing. People thought he was corny. And meanwhile, this man was slowly amassing an empire.
Yeah.
And to do what he has done. And it's kind of funny because, you know, it's like right now, you go to some folks and you're like, do you know who Byron Allen is? Do you see what he's doing? And people, even within the black community, are like, no, we don't really know what he's doing. And I'm like, that is someone to highlight because of what his mission is. And he was just featured, I think, on CBS this morning, past Sunday. A nice little piece about him and how he worked with his mother and how this was his dream and he always went about it and how he went into court, took on Hollywood and some of these big institutional foundations and actually won, you know? That is something to pay attention to because that's the model. He set the blueprint for exactly creating the work ourselves. You know, you can knock down that door or you can build your own thing. And we did. I'm not decrying what Oprah Winfrey was able to do for herself. I'm not decrying what Tyler Perry has been able to do for herself. But what Byron Allen is doing is offering, I mean, anybody who's watching this right now, if you have a television idea or a script, you could send that to his production company and they will make something happen for you now.
Entertainment
It's almost
Studios.
open door, you know? And he's begging people
He's the
to
model.
join him in on this. So I think that is just, he's a monolith and I have the utmost respect for what he's doing.
And he's from Detroit, too, just
Yeah.
by the way.
Sean.
So yeah, I'm going to shout out the homie, Jerome Moore. He has a show called Deep Dish Conversations. He's right here in Nashville. Jerome and I met in the social justice space, and he's transitioned into this. He has this great show. I was recently on it. We recently taped. But he's in the third season, I think. But he's had some. I know you were on it too.
No,
You
not
never
yet.
been
No,
on it?
tell him
Okay,
I'd love to join,
okay.
though.
Well, Jerome, if you're watching.
No.
But he's had like some amazing guests, like just different movers and shakers in the business from different sectors, and he's talking to like people who are really making it happen and having really great conversations. Deep dish conversation. He orders a deep dish pizza, whatever you want on it if you're the guest. And y'all eat pizza and talk about the work that you do and talk about issues. And so I encourage you all to tune in, and hopefully he'll have some of these people on the panel on his show as well.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he's great.
As everyone, I was going to go with Misha Green, but since you already got Lovecraft, I won't go there. Yeah, but I will go with the name Tasneem Grace, writer, journalist, poet, author, actor, actress. We all know, those of us who know her. I will say Tasneem because everything that she is involved in, she's doing some storytelling tomorrow night. She's going to encourage each of us. I often say that she encourages each of us to be the better version of ourselves. And so, Khalil, you said to not be anything other than we are. That's a prescription that she lives by. And so all of her work and the content that she demands from us or the students that she's working with or the community, she demands us to be ourselves and show up and as authentic as we can be. So I shout out anything that Tasneem Grace is working on, please be a part of it.
All right, I've got a big one.
Okay.
Did you know that we have a black female majority owner for one of the largest film studios birthing in Atlanta? It's called Cinema South Studios. Mrs. Tammy Williams, who's a friend of mine. Her husband is a promoter. He brought New Edition to the city the other night. But they're based in Atlanta, and it's $135 million build out, 60 acres in Atlanta, black female-owned TV and film studio, Mrs. Tammy Williams. So look out for her. Like, this is so huge and so big for us as African Americans, but just for women in general. I mean, she's doing her thing. So, Tammy, if you're watching, congratulations.
And I love women. I ain't gonna lie, women is the best. For real, especially black women. They be doing their thing.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end. The fellas got me laughing over here.
My bad.
I wanted to make sure that we had a moment for all of you to offer a brief piece of advice for any filmmakers or podcasters or anybody else that may be watching at home tonight that are on like their first day. What is some information you could give a storyteller with all that you know now? What do you wish that you know when you started? We'll just go in the reverse order on this one, so we'll start right here.
Network. Meet as many people as you can. And in this era of social media, grab as much content as you can. I mean, it's free to be able to use your cell phone to create stories that relate to you, that are true to you. When you know who you are, you can just speak your truth. Someone else will resonate with what you're speaking. So network, get on social media, and grab as much content as you can with your cell phone. And even if you just store it up, if you don't know how to edit yet, just collect the content and get ready.
Very good.
Yeah.
So if I could speak to my 17-year-old self in my creative space, I would say that saying that all representation is good representation. I would challenge myself now in this iteration that there is something to be said about holding ourselves accountable and what that representation looks like.
I would tell anyone who has a dream or who has a passion to just start. That's
good.
the first step. And if you want to write a book but don't know how, like, just get out your laptop and start typing. You'll figure it out. Start. That's number one. But I also will say, like, if you're in a collaborative space, like filmmaking and content creating, I would say something I say a lot is make the work you do contagious. And so that is empowering the people around you to buy into what it is that you're doing so that they can help you do it. Issa Rae wasn't constantly reaching up. She talks about this. She wasn't like trying to reach the person that's way out there and hard to catch. She reached to the people beside her and she brought them in and she empowered them, and together through collaboration they were able to make dreams come true. So
All right, we got 10 seconds. Khalil, real quick.
Understand the definition of a classic. Just because something is super old doesn't mean it's not relevant. Look at what was happening 50, 60 years ago in the arts, and you'll learn rather than 10 or 15.
Malicia.
Keep going. Just keep going.
That's powerful stuff. And with that, I'm sorry to say that's about all the time we have this evening for We Foster Film. Once again, I want to thank my co-host, Big Fella, and all 5 of our wonderful panelists for sharing their time and insight. We also want to thank the Dugas Family Foundation for helping us make this program possible. We Foster Film is named in loving memory of Foster Dugas, who loved movies, monster makeup, Halloween, and all things creative. We are constantly thankful for the impact he has had here at NECAT and his ongoing legacy of creative and technical educational programming. To learn about We Foster Film and NECAT, please visit us on the web at necatnetwork.org. We want to thank you all at home for watching and hope you will join us back again next time on We Foster Film.
We brought y'all here today because we're gonna start a 3-day writing workshop. For 3 days, we're gonna have people come in here and talk to y'all and get y'all to write. Just write what's on your mind, just write your thoughts out. You don't have to do too much, you just gotta write whatever is on your mind. Whatever is on your mind for these 3 days, it's not just good, but it's perfect, all right? My name is Willy James Sims Jr., but everybody know me as Big Fella. All the kids call me Mr. Big Fella. It's just what it is. I got involved with the Freedom of Voice Youth Writers Workshop because, you know, we need to give these kids an opportunity to get what's inside of them out of them. We ran into a couple roadblocks. The party bus we wanted to have didn't come through. But at the ninth hour, 4 o'clock on the Friday, Premier Transportation came through. The Nashville Chamber of Commerce hooked us up with Premier Transportation. And Ken at Premier Transportation said, you know what? We'll move them kids around for all 4 days, free of charge, man. We love what y'all doing. And I mean, it was amazing. I thought they was coming in a 22-passenger shuttle. Y'all seen it? You seen it? They came in a tour bus, black on black, Juneteenth style. Somebody told me they seen the tour bus ride down Jefferson. I say, yeah, them kids, some black on black kids on that tour bus from community centers all over Nashville. We got 3 kids from 6 different community centers, and we brought them all together on the first day. They went over there to the library in the Civil Rights Room. They had a great discussion with Ms. Andrea Blackman and Tasneem Grace Tuaboga.
That's what writers do. They give us information to make us think deeply, right? You guys are writers. So I want you to spend 120 seconds walking around with the thought, what is this room making me feel? After your 120 seconds, you're gonna come back, you're gonna have a little pencil and you see Post-it notes all around here, and you're gonna write that down. This room makes me feel, give me the big word, and then give me your explanation.
This room makes me feel kind of perplexed because it really makes me like have to think back and I think like this is really how people treated others.
I feel educated due to the fact that I saw a book over there that stated the racial slurs that were used against us.
This room makes me feel like I was in the great movement because I feel this way because each time I see a march, I think how they felt when they were pushed away. I feel like I'm there because all of these pictures look so real and like it's happening right now.
A lot of the frustration, even the crime and problems that you see going on with our youth is really the fact that they're frustrated at what they see around them and they don't have a way to get it out. They have no outlets. It's all inside of them. So all the turmoil that's happening in the world, they taking it in, not even realizing they take it in, and now it's happening inside of them.
So on your tables, you have 2 photos, and someone asked me, was it Christiana? Yes, Christiana asked me, who were the photojournalists who took all these images, pictures of all these images? You're now looking at some of those images. And to answer your question, no, they were not African-American photojournalists, not for these. So these photos are from the Banner collection. Notice Mr. Rainey's question. The Nashville Banner was a newspaper. It closed in 1998. When that newspaper closed, they gave all of their photos and many of their articles to the library because we hold cool stuff, and that's why we have it. That's why we special collections, because we're special.
They walked them kids through history.
Okay. I have a photo that kind of looks like this. All these photos were taken in Nashville. Many of these people are still alive. Let's say I'm at a table and I have this photo. And I say, I'm going to focus on this little boy right here. I think his name is DeAndre. I think he's 10. I think DeAndre, let's study the photo. What's happening in this photo? We know this is photos from the Civil Rights Movement We know during that time there was segregation. It's a white boy, 2 white girls, and 2 black girls. What could be happening? Your group has to figure this out. What's the story behind it? But what is DeAndre's purpose? What's he doing there? I might say, DeAndre's mama said, you need to get to know some black girls, so he showed up. You come up with something, right? We're investigative. We're using our investigative muscles.
They showed them about all the history that happened in Nashville.
Dr. King came and he was speaking at Fisk in this photo. We're gonna ask Big Fella to read the words that Dr. King spoke when he came to Fisk.
I came to Nashville not to bring inspiration, but to gain inspiration from the great movement that is taking place in this community.
Thank you for that point.
But basically, you've seen it, it's on the wall. They talk to the kids about everything that happened in this city that made an impact on the rest of the world and the civil rights movement.
Can you read those? There's 2 words in that turn that I want you to say nice and loud. Can you show yourself what and what?
Friendly and courteous.
Okay. So we talked about this training that people had to go through, right, to get their minds right in order to be protesters. So they might spend 3 months in activities where people would actually come and pour, let's say, hot coffee on their heads or ice water in order to train you and to not respond to the abuse. And Torrance rule said be what and what?
Friendly and courteous.
So not only am I getting abused, I have to be friendly and courteous. Who thinks they could be friendly and courteous? Ooh, Zarai said, Who could be friendly and courteous while somebody is against your freedom? Who could do it?
Does it mean I have to like it?
You have to pretend you do.
It was so deep, you know, but that just got the kids thinking. It opened their mind up. It had them talking and discussing hard to discuss topics, or topics that you think about but you never talk about.
I think you march or something like that, and you do it for a reason because you're trying to change the law or just try to change people's opinion about you.
Ingram came in. Ingram Content Group, Ingram Book Publishing. All right, so tell them what Ingram has special for them today.
All right, so y'all familiar with Angie Thomas? Yes. Yeah.
You see what Ingram did for them kids?
Thank you, Ingram!
I'm tripping. They gave all of them a copy of The Hate You Give, and we used that as a catalyst for discussion. They all done seen the movie before, you know? So we had Miss Monica from the library, NPL, she came in and did a discussion with them.
Finding your voice, finding what you're passionate about. Find out what you're gonna say to public, what you're gonna say to the public, what you represent. Tell your story. What's important to you? If in 10 years and I pull up this book that y'all are gonna do, what do you want people 10 years from now to know about you? What do you want somebody next week from now to know about you?
We was just trying to get them writing, you know? Whatever we could do to get them kids to start writing, and they got their minds activated, and they started writing. Then we had Sean Witzel come through. Sean Witzel got them going, he put words on their back. He put words on their back and had them writing on each other and just getting their minds working, just writing and writing and writing.
With the markers in your hand, you're gonna go from person to person, and you're gonna write a word or a phrase or something that you think about when you see that word on their back, right?
I believe that maybe one day our dream will be treated as one will be fulfilled by others who are willing to speak up. Segregation may have ended, but racism still exists.
Yeah. All right. Then Southern Word came through, Mr. S, Saran. They call him Saran because his head is wrapped up.
All right, so you're gonna start with a color, and then from taking that color, you're gonna think of the first thing that comes to mind, right? So when I say blue, I think of sky. From sky, I think of clouds. From clouds, I think of rain. From rain, I think of drop. So what you're gonna do is you're going to use what we call a hook or a refrain. So I'm gonna give you a couple options. You have where I'm from. You could say I'm from. I come from. If you're feeling artsy, you can say I am.
Saran came through and taught the kids He got them right. Joe from the porch came through, got them right.
Right now, we're going to get a little outside of real life, outside of ourselves, and see if we can't take our heads to sort of a different space. And the rabbits had a lot of children. They survived very well. They really ate a lot of the grass, and they enjoyed being in the sunlight, and they made more and more rabbits, and they traveled to new parts of the world. And there got to be a point where there was too many rabbits. They were eating all the grass, they were drinking all the water, they were spreading so much that they didn't leave room for the other animals.
My teacher, who was an amazing moderator and helped put this whole thing together, my teacher Miles, she had words of inspiration for the kids, got them pumped up.
And you want to make sure that you collect as much information as you can and tie it to your passion and tie it to the things that you really love to do in your life and see how it can complement that thing.
You know what I'm saying? Myself, I even did a workshop. All right, everybody got something to write with? Everybody got their notebook open? Halfway. Okay, so today, this is what we're gonna go through. At the end of everything, we're gonna ask the question. Read it out loud. Yeah. So I'll say, you woke up this morning. Then what happened? And then what happened? Did you brush your teeth? And then what happened?
Then what happened?
I ain't had no business doing no workshop. But I did a workshop and it worked out. Writing a book is not as complicated as you think. They have no idea what's going on. You know, the process of putting a book together, sometimes you'll overthink things that you don't know, and you look at it and make it a bigger animal than it really is, you know? What they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you write a book? One story at a time, you know, one page at a time. So I figure with 20 kids writing one story, that's 20 stories, so now that's 20 pages. Add in pictures, then add another 10, 15 pages, just to show them the process of putting things together is not as complicated as we make it in our mind. I really didn't even want them to know that what was going to be the end result of this was going to be a book. I wanted them to just pop up and see a book and be like, wow, because you realize it don't have to be what you think it is in your mind. You remember it?
Yeah, it was like the most memorable summer ever. I didn't even know we were making a book, and that's just awesome.
All they're gonna do is remember this experience, and then when they see the book, they're gonna feel it like, oh my God, I wrote a book, I'm an author. And they're gonna think back to how it happened. They can take that back to their community center with the kids from their neighborhood, and you know, maybe we go do the same thing at their center with them kids, and we let it spread. You gotta do it to did it, and they did it.